All right, I thought I'd get on here for a little bit. This is Friday, I believe, the 8th of November. Let's see, let me give a real quick check here. It's always good to check. Oh, yeah, that's what my calendar says, so we have to take that word for it. All right, one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and you know, our election is over now, and part of the fighting and backbiting and gnashing of the teeth and everything, let's put all that aside. That we're called the United States for a good reason, and it's because our forefathers thought that by uniting we would be stronger, and with the help of a well-written constitution, our country could last for, in their eyes, forever. And along the way, we have certain amendments that are put on it or trying to take away from different things. But the pendulum swings in two directions, and as it swings, we grab a hold of it and try to either speed it up or slow it down. But we certainly don't want it to stop, because just as our nation swings back and forth between two different ideas, it seems to always right itself in one way or the other. And it's up to us to keep those dreams of our forefathers alive. And to do that, we have to get along. And so here's what I would ask you to do. And I don't want you to think of our nation as a divided party. I would like you to think of it this way. No matter which party you seem to cling to, there are people there that you voted for that did get in, okay? And we want them to get along and shake hands and run this country for us. That's what we put them there for. We didn't put them in there to fight and act like children. Certainly we didn't. And sometimes we have to be the example, because we seem to have put something in there that hasn't worked all that well at times. And regardless of what you believe or I believe, we still want this nation to stand. And I can tell you from my experience over the years in interaction with different countries, ours, in my opinion, is the best in the world. I really feel that way. And I would like to share it, but I want to share it in a fair way. So moving into the future, there's going to be some big decisions coming up that are heartbreakers. And I think one of them is going to be that our economy, we want to keep it on the right path. And I do believe that it has got onto the right track as far as trying to get some people back to work. The one thing that has hurt me personally is that I'm on a fixed income. I'm retired and have been for quite a few years. And my taxes have went up, and my grocery prices are up, and there isn't anything that I can do about it. I physically can't do it. Mentally, I'm not sure how to do it. But I hope I've elected the right people or tried to get the right people in there, and I'm sure you do too. But I do know that over the next few years, along with prayers and maybe the good Lord will help us out a little bit, we can make it so it's equitable for all of us, the working class, the people that need help, the people on fixed income. And I have no problems with people being rich. Sometimes it's the reward of the labors they put forth, or maybe their fathers did. But in any case, I was taught a long time ago, don't worry about what somebody else has. Work hard and be satisfied with what you can earn and do in life. If you set a goal and work towards it, someday you will realize that goal. And it's a hard pill to swallow if you fall in a hole along the way and trip up or whatever. The other thing I was taught is that, our Constitution, it gives everybody the right to have a life of their own as long as it doesn't step on society itself. And if you have a piece of property and you want to be on that property and live your life, you should have a right to. And in fact, that's what our forefathers had foreseen for us and they even give the right of having property away and said, these territories are open and you can have so much land and it's yours. All you have to do is settle it for so many years and make it prosper. And so through hard work, people were able to realize the American dream of a house and property. And at that time, there was no cars, but there was horses. The horses were your partner in getting to that aspect, whether it be travel or helping put in and, help clear land, number one, but also to break the earth so that you could sow a crop and they would help you take the crop out. So it was a partnership between man and animal to get there because, quite frankly, a lot of the country was successful because of all the farmers out there that grew not only enough for themselves but for others as well, and that provided an income. And then you had to have shopkeepers and eventually the train that provided travel and up till this day. But we all worked together through all those years to build this country. And I don't want to see it tore apart because of hatred or jealousies and things like that. So if we can have a peaceful negotiation of goals and try to overcome the obstacles that could lay before us. Some of them are imaginary obstacles. Some of them we think are going to be there. And some of them we may have already overcome. And it is time to get out there and put our brains together and a little elbow grease. And let's get this country running on all eight. And I don't want to see us turn into strictly a social regime, because most of them usually, in one way or the other, they fail the people, not necessarily as a country, but they fail the people out there. And the most important part, and the reason we are a country, is because of all of us, our part in being there. And it can't run without us, not run good. And so once we get this thing back on, we can do a little more sharing. And that means with people from the outside coming in, and they'll be offering their labor and intelligence along with ours to make this country better. If we can learn the things that they did back in the beginning of this country, this great country that it is, maybe we can get into the next century. Half the country is one way and half another way as far as party. So let's disregard thinking that you and I are one or the other. Let's get with our senators and congressmen and governors and trustees and all those people that we put in there to run things for you and I, to get this country running like the old Singer sewing machine. Let's ask them to forget the party lines. Let's ask them to put a smile on their face and reach across the aisle and shake hands. Instead of coming out fighting, let's come out working, because that's what we pay them for. That's the job we put them in there for, not to fight. Each of us have things on the agenda we'd like to see come forward, and you have to think of it more or less as a debate until we come to an agreement. And there's never a time where we can't come to an agreement. The negotiations have to be fair, and we have to be able to work them out in the end before we accomplish the task. And if we can't get together to do that, we won't realize anything. Now, I think some of the most important things for our country, number one, we have to figure out how to keep from going further in debt. We can't keep giving money away, neither to ourselves or to other countries. we need to be able to live within our means, and you and I don't have a choice, because when we run out of money, we die. Quite frankly, we cannot get past that desk at the hospital in real terms. They will stabilize you enough to get you out the door, and then you walk 10 steps, it's somebody else's problem. We need to change some of that, and we can. And years ago, we had started trying to get a type of insurance that we could all afford, that we would all be able to have. Well, we do have insurance, and it is not complete. But if you have enough money, no matter what's wrong with you, they will treat you and cover you. But the secret is, do you have enough money to pay for it? Not everybody does. And how do we get around that? Well, I guess it's simple as Social Security. Yeah, it's a social program. But it was a way for older people to retire without starving, because it's better to die a natural death than one that's forced upon you because it's something you can't provide for yourself. Part of the brotherhood of the United States. That's us. I worked hard during my working life and willingly gave of my paycheck, along with the employer that I worked for, so that those that retired at that time were able to live a decent life. It does not, absolutely does not cover everything you have to have. Social Security is a help in getting to that point. It needs to be a two-pronged program, and I would like to see someday that people are intelligent enough to realize that. But our stability and our well-greased commerce depends on the stock market. And I know you say, well, there's really nothing there. Well, yeah, there is. It's the holdings that we hold in other companies to keep them successful, and the payback is because we invest in them, we get dividends. And as inflation sets in, hopefully our stock will go up with the inflation so that we don't lose anything along the way. There's a way to keep our government stable and ourselves. And the reason I know that is because I did invest in programs to help me stay afloat with stock. And there's times where I cry when I see the stock market, when it's performing at about noon every day. And there's times where I'm rejoicing and happy. But overall, the stock market has been pretty fair, providing some dividends, not all, and a way forward, because our country has been that healthy. And there have been years where it was flatlined. And I was able to survive those without a problem. I didn't get ahead, but I didn't get behind. And I'm satisfied with that, quite frankly. And you should be too. Now, I worked hard, and I did get a small retirement income, through a retirement fund with an employer. And it helped, it supplemented. And my investment in Social Security and my forefathers that came before me, and the ones that are out there now working, I have Social Security, and it is what balances out my portfolio for the future in my retirement. It allows me a decent life. I don't live a rich life, but I'm not poor. It's hard to hold on to the things I've got because I'm taxed for my house. It has more than doubled since I retired. I retired about 15 years ago, last month, 15 years ago. I don't go out and buy new cars. I don't buy new fishing boats or any of that stuff. I had a few along the way, and they come and go. Right now, no, I'm not running a fishing boat anymore. I don't have one in my backyard. And my motorhome is gone because my age has got caught up with me, and I don't trust myself with that big beast going down the highway. Even though I'm not as smart as I was when I was younger, I'm smart enough to know my limitations. And just as I know my limitations, I would like our country to know their limitations as well. And as much as I would like to help every single poor person out there, I know I don't have enough to do that. But I do help with what excess that I've had over the years. I've never had a qualm about trying to help somebody up. Our nation needs to be a little scrutinize what we're doing. And when I say that, I don't think we should feed somebody else's wars or civil war or that type of stuff. I think we need to figure out how to stop it. And we can stop it as easily by defunding something as we can funding it. If the money isn't there, they can't fight. And by restricting their movements of what they can do, then they're going to have to find better ways to fight their battles. And maybe at the negotiating table rather than with rockets and tanks and stuff like that. I know it's nice if we think that we not only can we defend ourselves, but we can go out there and be aggressor enough to whip some other country. But that's not the point of human life. We want to prevent those problems if at all possible. We want to be able to defend ourselves when the inevitable comes and somebody decides to come after us. I think our country is fairly strong, but I don't think it's as strong as it was at one time. There are certain things we need to do, and that is to strengthen our way in technology and the ability to manufacture anything that we need. One of the major problems I worry about in our future is manufacturing. We have given away a lot of small things, like, paper products. A simple thing is a pen to write with. The clothes that you're wearing, where are they made? I'm wearing some of the best T-shirts supposedly made, and they're not made here in the United States, unfortunately. I have to rely, and we, as most of us do, that we buy almost all of our clothing and stuff in another country. We have restrictions, so many restrictions here because of, some of it's liberal, some of it is policy that maybe a rich person doesn't want competition. I have seen towns fade and fold because they had got some big manufacturer come to town and they put all their eggs in one basket. And instead of inviting other manufacturers there to compete for the labor, they sided with one side. They paid the bulk of the taxes in that town. And the day comes along where equipment gets old, they see an opportunity somewhere else. And in this case, in the last 25, 30 years, a lot of these small manufacturers moved to other countries, whether it be Mexico, Canada, overseas, Japan. Japan was a big one. They took over the steel industry, the banking industry, and it just about broke our country when that happened because we were one of the biggest steel manufacturers in the entire world, and then we went to almost zero. It was a shame. We seek a better life that costs less. And we can't have our cake and eat it too. We have to realize that as we get the better things, we have to work for them and we have to pay for them. And if we're stable enough to supply products in a time of need within our country, that's what stabilizes us as much as any hydrogen bomb or army or anything else. We have to be able to have those products at the ready. You can have the army as big as you want, but if you can't manufacture the products for them, the army is out there without, they can't get gasoline to go down in the field. They can't get the ammunition for their weapons. You have to think about it a little bit. We have to be a country, a whole country, not a piece of a country. And we are only a piece of a country at this point. Our oil reserves are at pretty much an all-time low. And we need to get those back in there. And yes, I realize that a decision was made to use a lot of it up to keep the pricing down on the fossil fuel pressure that was making the prices rise. And the reason a lot of that rose up is because we made it harder to drill and pull oil from the ground, or the fracturing, we were bringing it to a step or stop. And we had to depend on the world market, and we put a lot of pressure in the world market, and prices started coming up. So transportation got a hit, wholesale got a hit, and the retail market took a hit, and then we had to pay for everybody's problem. We did, because we bought the product. Other countries that didn't go along with some of these programs didn't get hurt as much. So their inflation was less than ours. And now, because of the inflation and the price market increase, they can trade with us a lot easier. And the only way to level the field, well, part of it is they're going to have to pay more money to trade with their country, which is going to raise the prices from that country. The biggest thing we need is to bring the manufacturing back into our country. We have a ready labor force out there in this country. As we bring manufacturing back, we can have more immigrants into our country to fill that gap if we need the labor. It would be a win-win situation if we can somehow put everybody to work here. And what about the people on the street? They're more than ever in history have we got people on the street, even worse than back in the Dust Bowl and the days where the economy completely went bonkers. And yet, we brought in a lot of people that had no jobs, no way, they didn't really have a lot of trade. We don't know who they are or what they did before. And they're sitting on our nickel, and we have all these people in the street that can't afford a roof over their head. Some of them actually work, but they just can't afford a place to live. They don't have a roof. They get enough money to feed themselves and live in a tent or in a car or in a van or even an RV. But they really don't have a stable home. We need to fix that. We need to get back to the way we were. You know, back in the 50s, there wasn't a lot of money, but people worked really, really hard. Believe me, it was a lot harder back there in the 50s, and harder yet in the 40s. But they pulled together, and they made this country run. Our manufacturing was at full blast back in the mid-50s, and we come out of an era of hardship into an era of utopianism. Everybody had 2 cars in the driveway and a boat and a new house. And as soon as they were out of college, their credit was immediately available so that they could go buy those things without having to have a huge down payment or waiting in line for something. Everybody, it was working great. And then we overspent. And we didn't have enough money to pay the debts. People started getting laid off. Houses went back on the market. The price of the house that was $100,000 was all of a sudden worth only about 50 or 60. And you had to have more cash up front. The American dream was almost lost. This goes back to late 70s and early 80s. It was a rough time. I would live through it. I lost a business back then. The banker had told me, he said, Ray, those houses that you don't have paid for, you need to get rid of them now, or you need to put them into long-term type loans so that you can rent them out. But he said the things are going to get tough. And I told him, I said, well, as hard as I work and as good as my company's running, I'm not going to worry about it. Because, see, I was in construction. Well, I learned a lesson. Because when the year 1982 come around, and I went in to put in for another loan, I found out the interest rates had more than tripled. And now I had to sign for construction loans every 90 days. It wasn't like it was before, where I could go on an annual construction loan, just like a farmer goes in for a loan for his crops to run his farm. And then I would pay it off in the fall and realize a profit before the year was up. That day, the realization came in, and not as many people could get their house remodeled or buy a new one or buy one that I'd remodeled. At that time, I was sitting on 4 homes. Not a good idea. None of them were paid for. And I scrambled to try to sell them, but I couldn't get them financed. Then you have to go to the point of either doing it on a private and hope that they can make the payments, or you have to figure out who's got enough cash to buy them off. And man, with that comes a deficit. I spent the next 6 years paying off my business loans. I got rid of all the property except for one home. I was able to make sure it was paid for. I had to go to another state and work and work and work for another employer. Luckily, I found one that was willing to pay me well, and the bonuses and pay raises and things like that went towards paying that business loan off. And the reason I paid it off rather than go bankrupt is because the people I worked with were friends. The bankers were good friends, people I seen on a daily basis. That type of analogy is what kept our country together, because people believed in the United States. A lot of people, rather than pushing that burden back off onto banks and other people, paid it. They worked it off. It was their fault. They took care of it. I've never felt bad about doing that. You know, even though I made good money, I had to live like I was broke for that period of time. It was a good lesson learned. It got me to where I am today. I always thought about what really pulled me through more than anything, and it was morals and honesty. And I'm not saying I'm the pillar of either, but I did put them together enough that I was able to pay off all my friends that I was in business with. I went on with life, never really worried about what I could have had. I have no idea, because it didn't happen. I know what I've got, and I'm happy with it. And I'm very happy with it. And the reason is, this country allowed me to rebuild myself and didn't put me in jail for being in debt. They didn't chase me down and pull blood out of a rock or anything like that. I was given the time it took to get on my feet. Now, they didn't have a lot of welfare programs back when all this was going on, although there was a few, but not many. And you weren't going to eat enough to keep you from getting hungry either, because they didn't give you it all. You had to do something. You just couldn't. We need to get back to the analogy that we had back in those days to get this country into the right spot. Now, a lot of you are going to say, I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's easy enough to say we need to work together, but how are you going to do it? Well, when I was growing up, we got most of our morals not only from our parents, but from the church we attended. And you become an example of a certain amount. You still had all your different personalities, the people that were bullies, the people that were do-gooders. The whole line was still there. But we had the tolerance of the morals we were taught. Basic morals, that's all it is. The 10 Commandments of the Bible are simpler and easier to follow, and yet it covers all the bases. And we, as men and women, we put all these rules out there. Matter of fact, we've got Congress setting rules and laws on a daily basis. And we have sub-parts of our government that are doing the same thing without our permission, by the way. They're appointed agencies, whether it be the EPA. The EPA in this little town here, in the last couple of years, and there's in our town, there's a little over 1,000 people, but we looked at it better than a $3 million debt for the improvements for a septic system, or not a septic, but a sewer system. We don't have septics here. And it returned it to a system that was in place that had been renewed a little over 10 years before that. Back at that point, they said, well, your system will never hold up. So we had to redo it a little differently. Now, we're back where we were then, but we had to remake our plant again. So they changed their mind and decided that what was done, which now at this point it was 14 years ago, that what we did back then is what we gave up, what we tore apart, was adequate. It's what we should have had now. Oh my. the intelligence of the government back then, right? Well, we should have stood our ground back then and we'd have been okay today. By the way, we never did violate any system that the APA set out there. EPA, I hope I said it right. Anyway, we need to work with our senators and congressmen so that they limit the power of all these sub-agencies out there that are making laws, they're running wild. They don't know exactly what they're doing. It's up to you and I to take government and bring it back into our hands where we can handle it ourselves. I would like to see the federal government shrink. about half the money that's paid out in this nation for wages is actually goes through the government as wages. Most of us now are getting into the point where we actually work for the government. That means the other half are supporting the employees of the government. So what else are we doing? I'm just asking you. It is getting to that point. So that means it's getting way too big. Our national debt's way too big. They have gold lust. They want to spend it. It's not one party, by the way. Both parties spend money. Both parties have put us in debt. And it's up to us to bring it to a halt. Now, what happens when we bring it to the halt? Well, then the taxation comes down to the local government as it falls off from the federal, so that we can do it here at home. But in the meantime, we knock out all those middle people that have been getting salaries. They need to go back into the manufacturing sector and earn their money there, rather than pencil pushers for the government to shuffle money, because that's what they're doing. They're shuffling money. They're not working hands-on work. They're clerks. Let's get back to elbow grease. Let's get back to the manufacturing industry of our country that made it so advanced. Let's get that going. Biggest thing I want to see is peace among all of us. We're all brothers and sisters in a united states. You know, our mother country was England, the United Kingdom. And they have been there for centuries and centuries. And yes, I know that they're full of socialist programs, and they fight like cats and dogs in their legislators. And yes, they have a caste system of where you're at. And we took a similar system to that and made it much better, made it so each of us had independence. Let's not fall back into the things that our mother country has and had back then, and then have part of our country split off from us so that they could say, we want our independence. We do not want taxation without representation, because we're there right now. So I would ask you, those people you voted for, let's make sure they're doing their job. Know what they're doing. Know what they're voting for. Know what they're spending foolishly. And have them stop doing that. Get rid of the pork. Get back to basics. We need a roof over our head. We need food on the table. And we need a job we can go to. Let's get back to that. Let's do it. So with that, I'm going to let you go. And let me tell you something. I don't want a bunch of haters in my channel saying, oh, yeah, you think you know it all, or something to that similar effect. If I knew it all, I probably would be president of the United States, or maybe king of the world. I don't know. So don't ask me about stuff like that. I have suggestions and ideas, and I'm asking you to put yours and mine together, and let's move forward, and let's not fight about it. The morals that I learned in the church, it's too bad that most of us don't go to church anymore, which would include me. I haven't sat in a pew in a while, and I guess part of it's age and part of it is my bullheadedness, but I haven't forgotten the morals I learned there all through life. Do I still pray? Every single day. Do I believe in the Lord? I do. I also believe in hard work and in all the honesty you can muster without hurting your neighbor. I think that the giving portion of us, we need to keep that going as well. But let's do it within reason. Let's not give so much that we make somebody non-independent let's make them so that they're independent of us. No one should be our slave. We should not have to support a person that is able to go out and work. But we do need to figure out how we can get a job that they're capable of. You can't make somebody so dependent on you that you're feeding them every meal. But you can teach them how to get that meal through hard work and one way or the other. You know, we might end up with a lot of street cleaners out there. When I was in Europe, there was people on just about every couple of blocks sweeping the street by hand. They didn't have street sweepers over there then. But what I'm saying is, we have to make people feel good about themselves, and they feel better when they can earn the money that buys the food for their table and puts a roof over their head. It is a thinking process of making things work, and it's up to those that are in charge to try to provide those things so that we're all dealing on an equal table or an equalization of some kind of ability to get there. And we don't all have to be rich. We just have to be able to be comfortable within, just as if you can be comfortable with yourself, you should be able to be comfortable with what you can accomplish. What about getting everybody off the street if we can? You know, it's going to take mental hospitals and psychiatrists, factories. We've got to get some of these regulations in hand so that we don't handcuff somebody that's going to build a house that's 500 or 600 square feet and tell them, nope, everybody out here builds 1,400 square feet or better. We can't do that to people. You know, back when I grew up, 300 or 400 square foot house raised, well, for us, it raised a family of 6. So can it be done today? Absolutely can. As a matter of fact, today, if you had a small house, you'd have a lot more spending money to go see the world. And there's so many things out there to see. Why wouldn't you want to see that? Why do you want to sit in your house and play with a boob tube like this? And I'm only doing this because I'm retired. When I was a kid, the house was small enough, we wanted to go see things. So we spent most of our time outside. I absolutely spent most of the time outside. Wintertime come along, you'd be out there with a sled or something, pulling, riding, you were throwing snowballs, building forts, ice fishing, ice skating, all these things. In the summertime, you were out there swimming in the same place you went ice skating. And you were catching fish, and you were having a ball, making forts and stuff. You just had a ball. You didn't have the TV where you could sit down inside and watch the TV. That would have been, back then, and I don't know how old I was when we got our first TV, but it was boring for me. I never lost the want of being outside. To this day, I love it outside. Love it. I wish I could instill those things and everybody out there to be more happy with where your station in life is so you wouldn't have to worry about what somebody else is doing. I think we got too used to somebody else making all those decisions for us. And I'll tell you how easy it is. When I was in the military, they told you where to sleep, when to wake up, where to eat, how to eat, even what time you could even go to the bathroom if it came down to it. Every aspect of your life was controlled by somebody else. And after a while, you get used to it. Now, first 2 months or 3 months of service, they beat it into you. Literally, you go through some physical things that you never dreamed you would, and I don't know how it is today, but back then, it was not an easy road to do. And if you were in decent shape, you got through it fine. If you were somebody who's a little overweight, buddy, that was a tough road. I'm just telling you, it was not easy. Now, luckily, I was young enough that I was in decent shape back then, but I seen a lot of people suffer. When I got out of the military, for a while, it almost scares you because you're having to fix your own meals, buy the groceries, find a place to sleep, get the roof over your head. And I had, luckily, halfway through service, I got married. My wife and I had a child. And when I ended up back here in the States, we moved into an apartment complex while I was still going to the military. And I got a taste of what it was like to find a place to stay. We were building our family, but it was all brand new to us because up until that point, I'd either been in the service or somebody in the family member was taking care of us in some way. And when you're on your own, all of a sudden, it is scary. And that first year I was out of the service, we had all the ups and downs you could think of where your cupboards are empty, your car breaks down, there's no job there to go to, unemployment may be run out. All kinds of things happen to you when you first get married. And you almost want to scream. It is very stressful. And then when you get a good job and things look up and you've found a place where it provides all those things, all you have to do is provide a little elbow grease. You're such a happy person at that point, and you move on. And I think we should instill some of that responsibilities back into all our peoples, all the people that have to go out there and try to find their way. If we marry them into a welfare system they can't get out of, that's unfair to them and unfair to all of us. So let's work together. Let's get these people up and running. Let's get our country working in the right direction. Let's bring our people home. Let's bring our manufacturing home. Let's be a united country again. Forget about the party affiliations. Make those people work for you. You voted them in. Get their butts off that chair. Get those fat asses back up there moving and investigating, getting things done in our behalf. Not their behalf, our behalf. Okay, with that I'm done. And yeah, I've run the gamut out there, and I know you're bored as hell listening to me because it become a lecture. But listen, there's some good ideas in there. And I want you to wake up with those, like a spring day that the rain is over, the sun shines out there, the fresh smell and the breeze coming along, and you're so happy. Let's bring that back to the United States now. And let's look forward to better times. And it'll come. But we have to do it. We do. Look in the mirror when you ask for better times. You're going to provide it for yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And if you rely on it, I'll give you an example. If you sit on your tough and let somebody take control of your country and tell you everything's going to be all right, I want you to look at Cuba. A lot of good people came under the rule of a dictator back in the 50s. And it was going to be equal among all of them. And I want to tell you something. It's about as equal as you can get in that country. A little island called Cuba. But they have nothing. Very little. If it wasn't for the love of families, they would have nothing at all. It was a very poor country, and they thought they were doing the right thing, and they made it into a socialist regime with the dictator policies that don't work very well. And all of a sudden, when they had cut the world off, they cut their nose off to spite their face. It did not work. Let's not do that here, people. Let's work together. Don't let a dictator take over and tell you what you're going to have to do. And I'm not talking about the way the election come out. Absolutely not. The people in our country have spoken at this point. Now you need to speak to your independent legislator that you put in there. And that goes from the president all the way down to your senators and your Congress and all these little agencies out there that work supposedly under their thumb. Okay? And let's get rid of all the overhang that we have from the different government agencies. Let's get it back into our hands in our local areas so we can determine our outcome. Okay? That's what you want to work towards. Don't think about the country, what it's going to do for you. Think about what you can do for the combination of your brothers and sisters in the country. That's what you want. We want our country to be strong, and we want to back it in every way that we can. But we do not want the country running us. They work for us. We need to work them. Okay? With that, I'm going to let you go.